Hey guys, it's Miss Simpson and it's time for your read aloud today. So, since we are working on nonfiction and reading today, I cannot use our read aloud for your reading grade this week. So, we are going to do a separate video this week, all this week, that is just your read aloud so we can finish Gregor the Overlander before the school year ends. So, you are going to have a quick little read aloud video every day, and you're also going to have something to go along with the read aloud. Today, it's just going to be a quick and easy flip grid where you just record yourself and turn it in just to make sure that you are watching these videos every single day, because when we pick back up with fiction again, which will probably be the next week, you are going to need to be caught up with this book. So please make sure you're listening to this because you're going to need it for the next week. So we left off last Friday on this part right here. Let me make my picture a little smaller so you can see. All right. It is when Gregor recognized a rat that Vikus knocked into the river, and Vikus say that this rat will be Lexa and Henry's guide. Their guide for their journey. A rat. What? A rat is the people is the animal that's been attacking them. So why in the world would they say a rat? I'm quite baffled by this, but oh well. Let's go ahead and let's read in chapter 19, and we're going to see what happens with the rat, if they are upset by it, if the rat's mean, if they eat them. I don't know what's going to happen. I want you to pause the video right now and make a prediction. What do you think is going to happen in chapter 19? All right, let's get started. "Stay you!" cried Vikus as Lexi, Henry, and Mara sprang up, swords in hand. "Stay you!" The rat disregarded the three armed humans with amusement. "Yes, stay you, or I shall be forced to move, and that always puts me in an ill humor," he said languidly. Lexa and Mara stopped uncertainly, but Henry ignored Vikus's command and lunged at the rat. Without moving another muscle, the rat flicked his tail. It cracked like a whip, knocking the sword from Henry's hand. The blade spun across the stone floor and slammed into the cavern wall. Henry gripped his wrist in pain. The hardest lesson for a soldier to learn is to obey orders he believes are wrong, said the rat philosophically. "Take care, lad, or you shall end up like me, stripped of any respectable rank and warming your shabby old hide at the fire of your enemies." The rat nodded at the old man. "Vikus." "Rip Red," said Vikus with a smile. "We have just commenced dining. Will you join us?" "I thought you'd never ask," said Rip Red, pushing himself off the wall and slouching over to the fire. He squatted back on his haunches next to Sullivan. "My dear Sullivan, how kind of you to fly out to greet me, and with a war on, too." "I could scarcely have missed an opportunity to break bread with you, Rip Red," said Sullivan. "Oh, come now, you know perfectly well you only tagged along to wheedle information out of me," said Rip Red, "and to gloat over your victory at the flames." "I destroyed you," said Sullivan with glee. "Your army turned tail and ran howling into the river." "Army?" snorted Rip Red. "Why, there were as much as an army as I am a butterfly. I'd have stood a better chance fighting with crawlers." The rat looked at Timp and Tick, who were cowering against the wall, and sighed. "Present company accepted, of course." Boots frowned and toddled over to Rip Red. She pointed her chubby finger up at him. "You mouse?" "Yes, I'm a mouse. Squeak, squeak. No, shoo, shoo. Back to your little bug friends," said Rip Red, picking up a hunk of dried beef. He tore off a piece with his teeth and noticed Boots hadn't moved. He pulled back his lips to reveal a row of jagged teeth and gave her a sharp tss. "Ah!" said Boots, scurrying to her roaches. "Ah!" "Don't do that," said Gregor. The rat turned his glowing eyes on him, and Gregor was shocked by what he saw there. The intelligence, the deadliness, and most surprisingly, the pain. This rat was not like Fanger and Shed. He was much more complicated and much more dangerous. For the first time in the Underland, Gregor felt completely out of his league. If he fought this rat, he wouldn't stand a chance. He would lose. He would be dead. "Ah, this must be our warrior," said Rip Red softly. "How very like your daddy you are." "Don't scare my sister," said Gregor, trying to keep his voice steady. "She's only a baby." "From what I hear, she's got more guts than the lots of you combined," said Rip Red. "Of course, courage only counts when you can count. I'm presuming the rest of you can count and will be screwing your courage to the sticking place any minute now." The rat glanced around at Lexa, Meredith, and Henry, who were keeping their distance. The bats were extending and folding their wings, unsure of what to do. "Well, Come on, isn't anyone else hungry? I hate dining alone. It makes me feel so unloved. I did not prepare them, Rip Red, said Vikus. Clearly, said the rat. Clearly, my arrival is an unexpected pleasure. He went to work on his beef bone, making an awful scraping sound. Meet you, Rip Red the Gnar, said Vikus to the group. He shall be joining the quest as your guide. There was a quick, breathy sound as half of those gathered inhaled sharply. A long pause followed in which no one exhaled. Gregor tried to make sense of what Vikus had announced so calmly. A rat. He was leaving them in the hands of a rat. Gregor wanted to object, but his throat had frozen. Finally, Lexa spoke up in a voice hoarse with hatred. No, he shall not. We do not travel with rats. The prophecy of Grey requires it, Lexa, said Sullivan. One Gnar beside. Beside could mean anything, snarled Henry. Beside, we leave the Gnar, or perhaps we leave the Gnar dead beside us. Perhaps you do, but having witnessed your last attack, I doubt it, said Rip Red, starting on a wedge of cheese. We have killed 5 rats since midday, said Lexa. You mean the idiots that I handpicked for cowardice and ineptitude? Oh, yes, bravo, your highness. That was a masterly piece of combat, said Rip Red, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Do not flatter yourself. You have yet fought a rat. They themselves killed Fanger and Shed, said Marith bravely. Well then, I stand corrected. Fanger and Shed were excellent fighters on rare occasion, said Rip Red. However, I expect they were outnumbered and somewhat thrown by the arrival of a warrior. What say you, warrior? Do you refuse to go with me as well? Gregor looked into Rip Red's mocking, tortured eyes. He wanted to refuse, but if he did, he could never find his dad. As if following his thoughts, Vikus spoke up. You need Rip Red to guide you to your father. These tunnels are unmapped by humans. You will never find your way without them. Still, he was a rat. Gregor had only been in the Underland a few days, and he already despised rats. They'd killed Lexa and Henry's parents, imprisoned his father, and almost eaten him in boots. He felt a kind of power surging through him when he thought of how much he hated them. But if all rats were bad, who was this strange creature staring at him from across the fire, offering to be their guide? So what's in this for you? Said Gregor to Rip Red. A fair question, said Rip Red. Well, warrior, I am planning to overthrow King Gorger, and I need you to help me. By doing what? Said Gregor. I don't know, admitted Rip Red. None of us does. Gregor rose and caught Vikus by the arm. I need to talk to you alone, he said. The anger in his voice surprised even himself. Well, he was angry. The rat was not part of what he'd agreed to. This was not what he'd signed on for. Vikus took Gregor's mood in stride. Maybe he'd expected it. They walked about 20 yards away from the group. So how long have you had this plan with the rat? Asked Gregor. Vikus thought a moment. I'm not sure exactly. Perhaps 2 or so years? Of course, it was all dependent upon your arrival. How come you didn't tell me about it before? Demanded Gregor. I do not believe in giving people more information than they can handle, said Vikus. Who says I can't handle it? I can handle it, said Gregor, obviously not handling it. Perhaps you can, at least more easily than Lexa and Henry. I may well have told you if we had never finished our discussion of the prophecy of Grey, said Vikus. No doubt you would have asked, and yes, I may have well told you. Gregor pulled the prophecy from his pocket and said, let's finish it now. He searched out the part of the prophecy where they'd left off. 1 Gnar beside and 1 lost up ahead. So Rip Red is the Gnar and my dad is the 1 lost up ahead, said Gregor. He read on. And 8 will be left when we count up the dead. What does that mean? Asked Gregor, pointing to the line. If you add up all the players in the prophecy, 2 over, 2 under, 2 flyers, 2 crawlers, 2 spinners, 1 Gnar, and 1 lost, you have 12, said Vikus gravely. By the end of the quest, only 8 will remain alive. 4 will be dead, but no one knows what for. Oh, said Gregor, stunned. He'd heard the words before, but they only registered now. 4 of us dead. But 8 alive, Gregor, said Vikus gently, and perhaps a world saved. Gregor couldn't deal with that part now. Wondering who would be left standing at the end of the day, he pushed on to the final stanza of the prophecy. The last who will die must decide where he stands. The fate of the 8 is contained in his hands. So bid him take care, bid him look where he leaps, as life may be death, and death life again reaps. I don't get this last part, said Gregor. Nor do I, nor does anyone. It is very cryptic. I believe no one will fully understand it until the final moment has arrived, said Vikus. Gregor, it is not pleasant, it is not easy, but it is essential, what I ask you to do. Essential to you. If you wish to find your father, essential for my people, if they are to survive. Gregor felt his anger ebbing, and fear filling the empty spaces it left. He took another tack. I don't want to go with that rat, said Gregor, almost pleading. He'll kill us. No, you cannot judge Ripred by what you know of other rats. He has wisdom unique in any creature. Things were not always so bad between human and rats. When Solivit and Ripred and I were younger, we lived in relative peace. Ripred would see that restored, but Kreen Gorger wishes all humans dead, said Vikus. So you're saying Ripred's a good rat? Said Gregor, choking on the words. If he were not, would I trust my granddaughter to his care? Asked Vikus. Your granddaughter? Said Gregor blankly. Luxa's mother was my daughter Judith, said Vikus. You're her grandpa? Why does she call you Vikus? Asked Gregor. These people were so weird and formal. How could he not have known that? It is our way, said Vikus. Look after her. If this is hard for you, know it is torture for Luxa. I haven't said I'm going yet, said Gregor. He looked into the old man's eyes. All right, I'm going. Is there anything else I need to know that you haven't told me? Only this. Despite what I said, I knew you were the warrior from the first time I spied you, said Vikus. Thanks, great. That's very helpful, said Gregor, and then they returned to the group. Okay, Boots and I are going with the rat. Who else is in? There was a pause. Where goes the princess? Go we, said Timp. What say you, Luxa? Said Vikus. What can I say, Vikus? Can I return to our people and tell them I withdrew from the quest when our survival hangs in the balance? Said Luxa bitterly. Of course you cannot, Luxa. This is why he times it so, said Henry. You could choose to... started Vikus. I could choose, retorted Luxa. Do not offer me a choice when you know none exists. She and Henry turned their backs on Vikus. Flyers, said Solivit, as Vikus seemed to have lost the ability to talk. Aurora and I go with our bonds, muttered Ares. Then it is settled. Come, Marith, we are needed at home, said Solivit. A distraught Marith quickly made up packs of food for the members of the quest. Fly you high, all of you, he said in a strained voice, and climbed on his bat. Solivit mounted her bat and unrolled her map. While Ripred helped her work out the safest route back to Regalia, Vikus moved to Henry and Luxa. Neither of them would turn to look at him. I would not part this way, but I understand your hearts. Perhaps one day you will be able to forgive me this moment. Fly you high, Henry. Fly you high, Luxa, said Vikus. He waited for a response, but none came. He turned and climbed heavily onto his bat. As miserable as Gregor felt about being dumped with a rat, his heart ached for Vikus. He wanted to scream at Luxa. Say something! Don't let your grandpa fly off like this. 4 of us aren't coming back. But the words caught in his throat. Part of him wasn't ready to forgive Vikus for abandoning them either. Fly you high, Gregor the Overlander, said Vikus. Gregor struggled with how to respond. Should he ignore Vikus? Let him know that none of them, not even an Overlander, could forgive him? Just as he had steeled himself against replying, Gregor thought of the last 2 years, 7 months, and was it 15 days now? There were so many things he wished he'd said to his dad when he'd had the chance. Things like how special it was when they were on the roof at night and tried to find stars, or how much he loved it when they took the subway out to the stadium to watch a baseball game, or just that he felt lucky that out of all the people in the world, his dad was his dad. He didn't have room inside him for any more unspoken words. The bats were rising into the air, and he only had a second to fly. A second. Fly you high, Vikus, he yelled. Fly you high. Vikus turned back, and Gregor could see tears shining on his cheeks. He lifted up a hand to Gregor in thanks, and then they were gone. So now all that's left is the rats, the 2 crawlers, 2, we don't have spinners yet, but 2 crawlers, 2 flyers, and 2 of the royal, 2 underlanders, and the rat. So they're all left with somebody that they don't necessarily trust. So today for your assignment, you're going to do a flip grid, and you're just going to tell me what your favorite part of that chapter was. And don't just say all of it. Be specific. I want to know exactly what your favorite part is, number 1. Number 2, I want you to predict what's going to happen. What are they going to do next? What do they need? What are they going to do next? Make a prediction. All right, guys, love y'all so much. Have a great